Hello and welcome once again to Iowa News and Views. I'm your host, Derek Maurer, sitting in for Joe Bolcom. We hope Joe will be back with us hosting next time, but for the time being, I'm it. If you're joining us for the first time, thanks for tuning in, and if you're a regular viewer, thank you for tuning in as well. Iowa News and Views is a 30-minute discussion of current events and issues important to Iowans, and we're seen throughout the state. In this edition, our topic is laboring for the Labor Party. Well, if you've been reading the headlines in the past couple of years, you know that there's some ferment out on the left fringes of our political system. Not always on the left fringes either. Sometimes it's Jesse Ventura in Minnesota. In other states, there have been some renegade Green Party candidates that have actually won office. There's some ferment out there, and we're speaking this time with two organizers from eastern Iowa for the Labor Party, and they're interested in cracking that door open a little wider, I think. Let me introduce our guests. They are from your left. I have to figure out which left we're talking about. Jeff Cox is first vice chair of the Johnson County Local Organizing Committee of the Labor Party. Jeff is a history professor at the University of Iowa and a former chair and state central committee member of the Iowa Democratic Party. Also with us is Al Achtner. Al is chair of the Local Organizing Committee for the Johnson County Labor Party, and he is the national representative for the American Federation of Government Employees here in Iowa City. And welcome to the show.
Thank you, Derek.
Thank you for coming. And as this show airs throughout the state, we're just coming up in probably a couple weeks for the kickoff of a major Labor Party campaign for just health care.
That's right.
Al, do you want to tell us a little bit about that campaign?
Yes, I'd be glad to, Derek. The Labor Party, in contrast to the two major political parties, calls in its platform for single-payer, nationwide, universal health care. And this is the issue that we will be doing most of our efforts to organize and increase our membership and publicity around in the upcoming months. We call it just health care, which not only means health care that provides justice for people, but we want to take out the profits, we want to take out the insurance companies, we want to take out the paperwork, we want just health care. And on June 6th, Sunday, June 6th, we will be kicking off our nationwide campaign with a radio call-in show. It'll be a 2-hour show, noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and then backing up through the rest of the country, which will be broadcast on the Pacifica Network, and also NPR is agreeable to broadcasting this, but for your local NPR station to broadcast the program, you need to let them know that you want to have it on the air. They won't do it on their own. So one of the things that I'm asking all of the people in Iowa that are interested in single-payer health insurance to do is to please contact your local NPR station and ask them to broadcast this Labor Party Just Health Care call-in talk show on Sunday, June 6th.
Okay. Just Health Care is a major campaign for the Labor Party to organize around. What are a couple of the other major issues that we can look forward to hearing about from the Labor Party?
Well, the Labor Party also calls for a 28th Amendment to the Constitution to provide Americans with a job at a living wage. Living wage ordinances have been popular. There's one working here in Johnson County. They've been so far dealt with primarily at local levels, city levels, and they deal with what terms of employment contractors to a city or a county should provide people. The Labor Party wants to go beyond that and say that everybody nationwide should have a job at a living wage, whether the employer is a contractor to the government or not. We also are focused primarily on labor rights, and something that we feel very strongly about is that workers should not have to check their First Amendment rights at the door when they go into their place of work. We call for the Bill of Rights to enter the workplace and not be left in the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
Let me come in on that business about the healthcare campaign. You know, every other industrial nation in the world and every European country provides 100% health insurance for the people who live, for the citizens of that country. The United States is the only country that doesn't. a solid majority of all Americans have, ever since the 1940s, been in favor of national health insurance, universal, comprehensive national health insurance. These polls never change. The American people want it. The majority of wage earners in America want it. The last president to ever endorse a universal, single-payer national health insurance system was Harry Truman. Since then, I mean, there was a time, I think, when the Democratic Party represented working people in this country. But in the last 20 and 30 years, the party has been moving in the other direction. It's become what I call a checkbook party. It's become more and more beholden to the private insurance industries and the private donors. I don't believe we'll ever get what every other industrial nation has until we have a party that represents the majority of working people in this country. That's one of the reasons we're trying to get a Labor Party started.
Mm-hmm. Well, what we saw when the last time that even a fairly mild reform was proposed in the Clinton plan was it just got blasted out of the water, if you want to use warlike terms about our political system. But Jeff, what makes anyone think, what makes you think as a Labor Party organizer that there's going to be a way around that big iron door of special interests?
Well, I think first is that you need a political party that's accountable to the majority of Americans who work for wages. I mean, the first fact that you need to keep in mind about Iowa and about America is the overwhelming majority of people work for wages, or they're retired on savings from their wages and from Social Security. And the difficulty with the Democratic Party is that over the last 20 and 30 years, it has moved in a direction of becoming more and more accountable to wealthy investors and political action committees. And the people who are recruited to run for office under the Democratic Party banner have become more and more recruited from trial lawyers and from business women and business people who don't have any ties with or links to or accountability to working people. And I think that under the present political system, it's less and less likely that we'll ever get national health insurance. Now, we know that it's possible in a democratic system to get universal national health insurance because it's happened in dozens of countries. But in almost all of those countries, there's been a political party that's really accountable to the labor unions and that's been accountable to working people. And that, I think, is the roadblock. Mm-hmm. I would say Bill Clinton's proposal was not universal, and it was designed to subsidize the private health insurance industry. It was one of a terrible disappointment that Tom Harkin opposed any kind of efforts to raise issues of single payer or universal national health insurance. But I think he did it because he gets a large amount of his funding from the private insurance industries in Des Moines. And so the roadblock there is a kind of not just private interest, but it's the relationship between the private interest and the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
I mean, we can write off the Republican Party. I mean, they are never going to represent working people. There was a time when the Democratic Party did, but I think that's no longer the case.
Okay, Al?
One of the problems with the Clinton proposal was that it was not just health care. It was a bureaucratic mess. People couldn't even understand it. They knew, the American public is not dumb. They understood that the program was a bureaucratic nightmare that really did not get to the heart of the problem of providing everybody with universal health care.
Okay. I want to kind of take off a little bit from the Just Healthcare campaign and start talking a little more about the Labor Party. Jeff mentioned that the Labor Party is really based in organized labor. Al, fill us in a little bit about the structure of the Labor Party and who all is involved in this.
Well, the Labor Party seeks to be an independent political force for working class people and labor unions by institutionalizing itself in the labor union structure. Labor unions, in spite of some ups and downs over the years, is the one working class institution that stayed with us for well over 100 years in this country. We will not take corporate money. We want to be based on labor union affiliations and individual memberships of merely $20. Otherwise, we want to have as our structure unions affiliating with the Labor Party. And so what we are looking for is city federations of labor, state federations of labor, local unions, district councils. There's varying amounts of affiliation fees depending on the size of the organization, but we want to finance ourselves strictly from labor union money and individual memberships from working class people. There's a national Labor Party, which is governed by what's called the National Council. You have membership depending on the international unions such as AFGE and the United Mine Workers that have affiliated with the Labor Party on a national basis. Those people that affiliate and pay, they get the voice. They get to sit on the council. The top position, so to speak, in the Labor Party is a national organizer, and that is Mr. Tony Mazzocchi, who comes from the Oil, Chemical, and Atomic Workers Union, another one of the internationals that's affiliated with the Labor Party. There are then state chapters. There are statewide organizations which currently have been formed in 4 states, New York, New Jersey, Ohio, Illinois, I believe. Then you have chapters, which is where you get at least 250 dues-paying members. And then we have local organizing committees, such as what we're doing here in Johnson County, which requires a minimum of 20 members. Our goal here is to build ourselves up towards a chapter. I believe that an appropriate unit would be Iowa's 1st Congressional District, with the 3 population centers of the Quad Cities, Cedar Rapids, and Iowa City, which have some of the strongest union density in the state. And if we build ourselves up to where we have a chapter of some 250 people, then we could start to take seriously the notion of running political candidates. As you may be aware, but as many of the viewers may not be, the Labor Party has yet to run candidates. We formed in 1996. At that initial convention, decided not to run candidates at that time, but to build the organization. At the second convention in November of 1998, just passed in Pittsburgh, which I went to, we took the step of adopting an electoral strategy that sets forth certain criterias of dues-paying members and affiliations, union affiliations in an area, that if we meet them, we can then start running candidates. The Labor Party does not want to ask anyone to waste their vote. The Labor Party is not interested in being perpetual 1% of the ballot, far at the fringe loonies. We want to build a strong party that will become an alternative to the 2-party corporate system.
Okay. Well, Jeff, I think labor union membership represents some 15% of workers. The Labor Party is going to have to reach out beyond that base. How do you see that happening?
Yeah, I mean, the purpose of the Labor Party is not just to represent the labor movement. It's to represent the majority of Americans who work for a living, who work for wages. And the reason that we want to build a base in the labor union movement, and there are hundreds and hundreds of union locals around this country that have affiliated with the Labor Party. There's a very long list, and there's a quite heartening response. But the purpose of this affiliation is to make sure that this party will always represent the interest of the wage-earning majority, always. That's the purpose of it. It's not a political party designed just to promote the interest of unions. It's a political party designed to represent the working class majority of American working people. And neither of the political parties will do that. And of course, you're exactly right. The Labor Party will have to represent not just unions, it will have to represent the working class majority of Americans. But it will also, by doing that, I think, strengthen the labor union movement. I mean, one of the things that it's difficult for me to think of anything that would make America a better place to live than to have a stronger labor union movement. People have to check their democratic rights at the door when they go to work in this country. And we need a much larger percentage of the workforce involved in unions, and one of the purposes of the Labor Party is to see that that happens.
Okay, let's take a short pause to remind viewers that you're watching Iowa News and Views. We're on every week at this same time right here on this channel. We bring out a new show every other week, so you got a couple of weeks to catch each one. We've recently added some new cities to the iNews network in Mason City and Council Bluffs, Omaha. If you're just catching us for the first time, welcome. Thanks for joining us. And we have a web page, and if you look on your screen right now, there's an address that you can go click at and find pictures of all of us and lots of information about the show, as well as a detailed schedule of when and where it plays. We also have an email address, and we know you're out there and we want to hear from you. If you have comments about the show, or if you have ideas for guests or topics, we'd like to hear about it. So let us know what you're thinking, and we'll be glad to take that all in. We're talking this time about the Labor Party in Iowa. There is, I think, one local organizing committee for the Labor Party, and that is here in Johnson County and aspiring to maybe a first congressional district-wide presence. We were, just before the break, starting to talk a little bit about how the organizing is going. Let's pursue that. How is it going? What kind of response is out there?
Well, it's slow going, but we're quite confident that as we get our message out that we will get more support and more union affiliations. Right now, the Iowa City AFL-CIO is an affiliate. Electrical Workers 204 in Cedar Rapids, which represents the Mid-America Energy employees, is an affiliate. Teachers Union 716, which has a lot of people like Jeff at the university, that is an affiliate, and we want to branch out. Our plan for branching out, and I'll put this to the viewers, is we would like invitations to come speak at local union halls, whether it's a regular monthly meeting, a 4th of July picnic, your Labor Day parade, a statewide convention, a council, AFSCME Council 61 meeting. That's what we want to do, is to get out and make our case to you and to demonstrate to you our belief that the two-party system is not delivering for working class people, and that unions and working class people need an alternative.
Well, Jeff, you're a former chair of the Johnson County Democratic Party, and clearly you've moved beyond that. I imagine one of the main questions you hear is, you know, doesn't the Democratic Party represent us? Labor has traditionally, or at least since Roosevelt, the Roosevelt era, been affiliated with the Democratic Party. Why isn't that working out?
Well, I'll tell you, I want to repeat one thing that Al said, is that we're not in the Labor Party going to ask anybody to waste a vote by throwing a Republican in office by voting for a Labor Party candidate that can't get but a tiny percentage of the vote. I mean, we're going to work, and we're here to stay. We're going to build up our support in the unions till we have enough support to run credible three-way candidates. Now, why not the Democratic Party? I think it's just clear that over the last 20 years, the Iowa Democratic Party has become a checkbook party. I mean, if you talk to people on the staff of the State Democratic Central Committee, if you talk to the legislators and the staffs of the legislators, they're concerned, first of all, with one thing, and that is getting their hands on contributions from wherever they can get them. I mean, I remember when I was on the Iowa Democratic State Central Committee in the late 80s, a staff member came in with an important announcement. He said, "We've got a $50,000 check from an Indian tribe in Connecticut." And I said, "Well, what are we doing with a $50,000 check from an Indian tribe in Connecticut?" He says, "Well, who cares?" Right? I mean, the whole business of politics has become a bidding game. Now, labor is playing that game. As the labor movement is playing that game and dumping money into the Democratic Party, but the labor movement is being outspent. The labor movement has X amount of money to give. The Democratic Party knows they can count on that money, and they're going after wealthy investors. They're going after soft money political action party, political action committee money. And the Labor Party is not only totally shut out of the Republican Party, the labor movement, the unions, are being outspent inside the Democratic Party. And you could see that very clear in the way the Vilsack campaign worked. I mean, 75% of Tom Vilsack's money in this campaign for governor was provided by the unions until he got elected. And then they opened, you know, the staffers for the Vilsack, first the campaign, and then the governor's staff made an appeal to all the people who had supported Lightfoot to support, you know, make up for it by making contributions for Governor Vilsack's inaugural ball, and the private wealthy investors' money started pouring in January. It was all on the front page of the Des Moines Register. It's absolutely no secret. And you know who is going to have influence in the Vilsack campaign now. They are going to rank the people who call into the governor's office according to how much money they contribute to the governor's campaign and to the Iowa Democratic Party. And the labor movement is going to be outspent in those campaigns. Now, the second thing that's happened is in Iowa is an abandonment of this commitment to grassroots democracy that were symbolized by the caucus. I mean, when I first came to Iowa, the caucuses were really the focus of the state party and the county central committee. That has been completely abandoned. Mm-hmm. The grassroots democracy of the caucuses has been taken over by a campaign by Democrats to get as much money as they can out of the presidential campaigns, which then fund the state party which conducts the caucuses, calling into question, in my view, their ability to count the votes, since it's the people who fund the campaign who are actually funding the apparatus that counts the votes. So the Iowa Democratic Party is now awash in a sea of money from wealthy investors and wealthy political campaigns, and working people are being squeezed out. That's
Okay, I think Al had something to say.
From a more national or international perspective, why the Democratic Party, the answer to your question, why does the Democratic Party not serve the interests of labor anymore? NAFTA, the Multilateral Agreement on Investment, welfare repeal, the Freedom to Farm for No Profit Act, an unprecedented stampede to privatize government services. In 1996, over 90% of the money that came into the Republican Party for the campaign came from wealthy people and corporations. We kind of know that. That's not a surprise. For the Democrats, it was 2/3. That's not a working class institution.
Okay, well, and yet, you know, as these, you know, Al Gore and Bill Bradley are going to come and they're going to appeal to labor union members. Tom Vilsack was out on a number of picket lines during the campaign. He was, I thought it was fairly brave of him to show up there. Maybe you disagree. I mean, this is a contested field, and the competition is going to be pretty rough for those voters and those supporters. What, I guess, what history, or you know, what makes you think that you can really appeal to folks and grab them and hold them and form them into a viable presence in the political system?
First, we know that candidates other than Democrats and Republicans get elected. I mean, because they do. What's missing is a kind of apparatus to support candidates, alternative candidates, through thick or thin. And that's one of the things that distinguishes the Labor Party from other third parties. That is, we're attempting to build an institutional base that will provide a support for three-way races, and that people know is always going to be there. That is, we're preparing an institutional structure that is prepared for defeat and for victory, but is determined to run only credible candidates. And that is one of the things that distinguishes the Labor Party from other third-party candidates. We're not jumping in and running kamikaze candidates, protest candidates. We're going to work and try to build an institutional structure that will be a permanent feature of American political life, and it will probably take decades to do it. But all I can say is, you know, we're not going to go away, and there are 500,000 elected officials in America. 500,000. There are going to be some opportunities for the Labor Party to win some elections. And once we start winning some of those elections, we're going to start getting some attention, and it will snowball, largely because working people are going to recognize that the Democratic Party is not going to reflect their interest. There are a lot of pro-labor Democrats, and we're not asking people to waste their votes by voting in people like Jim Ross Lightfoot. We're going to wait, and we're going to choose candidates who can run three-way races where the Democrat is clearly not a supporter of the labor movement. That's our strategy.
Okay.
In this last fall's elections, nearly 100 congressional races were not contested at all by one or the other of the two major parties, or the opposition was so token that it was a one-way race. Iowa's 5th district is like that. There basically was not really any credible opposition out there. The Americans deserve more of a choice than that. Americans know that they're not getting a choice. That's why voter turnout keeps going down every single year, including this last fall. But look what happened up in Minnesota when people sensed, at least, that they had a choice. They had 62% of the voters turn out in Minnesota. Thousands upon thousands of young people were clamoring to get into the voting booth on election day to vote for the very first time, because they were voting for something that they thought was different. Americans are looking for a choice. I believe that they want common sense, and the Labor Party is prepared to offer that to them. The first way that we're prepared to offer that to them is single-payer nationwide health care, our Just Health Care proposal. Please tune in June 6th, call your NPR station, and ask them to run the show.
Okay, we're getting down to the wrap-up zone. I think we'll start with Jeff. Is there a final point you'd like to leave viewers with?
I saw Al Gore give a talk to AFSCME's national convention last summer in Hawaii. It was a kind of rabble-rousing appeal to the labor movement. But it became clear to me when Al Gore was talking to these AFSCME delegates that he is really offering working people nothing. What he said that he would do would be raise the minimum wage. Well, the Republicans are for that. He wouldn't repeal the Davis-Bacon Act. Thanks very much. That is, he won't make things worse. And that rhetorically he would support the right to organize, but there was no promise whatsoever of any changes in the labor law. I mean, I think that the labor movement is locked into a political relationship with people who don't support them and who are manipulating them and who are giving them rhetoric and not any real gains for the labor movement. And I think we deserve better than that, and I think the labor movement deserves better than that. And we want to give the labor movement a choice over the next decade or two that will change that.
Okay. Al, final thoughts?
Yes. You mentioned in your introduction about people on the leftist ends of things. The Labor Party is not leftist collectivism versus rightist individual rights. We are top and bottom. We're a working class party versus a corporate system. Another thing I want to point out is we are not a threat or an opposition to the AFL-CIO. I'm vice president of the local AFL-CIO. We want to work with the AFL-CIO. We'd like, ideally, to become their political electoral wing. But we feel that it's time for unions to go beyond endorsing the lesser of two evils. We need to put up our own people, financed by us, speaking our own issues.
Okay. Well, I think it's exciting that we're starting to see a few more choices. Last year, sometime on this show, we had some folks who were organizing the Green Party, and that's a much looser affiliation of folks. But in any case, it's exciting to see more choice, more voices out there, and let's hope that the two-party system can open up enough to let those voices be heard and not just shut them out. Thank you both for being here. Thank you for watching. We'll be back again next time. Please tune in. Thank you very much.